Hi, Vaginismus sisters. I'm so happy to be with you here again today. As you know, we just started these question and response sessions last week, and so this is our second one. And I intend to create this gathering here in this particular way with question and response, a tradition. We will have other traditions, of course, with events where we can gather and speak about particular topics as they relate to vaginismus, relationships, and love. And I wanted to start with a question and response because it is an incredibly powerful way to actually get guidance that is relevant to you and that is actionable and related to your unique experience of vaginismus. So I encourage you to participate in these sessions. The ways that you can do that is, number one, you can actually join me live in the Zoom room. As you'll see on the bottom right corner, there's a little Zoom logo, and that means I am in Zoom and I'm live streaming directly to Facebook. The second way you can get involved is by watching live or on the recording on Facebook and simply commenting in the conversation or asking questions as we go so I can answer them live. Or alternatively, just offering your words of inspiration and support to other Vaginismus sisters who have asked questions and are going through a particular time in their journey that may be extra difficult. So the intention is that we support each other. Why Q&R rather than Q&A? I touched this on this last time in our session together, and that's because I don't believe that any one person has all the answers. I do not have all the answers. You don't have all the answers. That is the power of gathering in community so we can share insights, experiences, tips, and guidance, and literally create a library of powerful resources that women experiencing vaginismus all around the world can use. This is why I started the page Pain Free and Intimate. This was the original name on Instagram. This was the intention, is to gather, to share, to celebrate each other. The second reason why it's called Q&R and not Q&A is because I recognize that my response to your questions is simply a response. It is not the answer. And I invite you to be a little bit skeptical if you ever hear somebody giving you guidance, advice, and tips where they say, this is the way, this is the only way, my way, or the highway. Right? How many of us have gone to a doctor's office? We have asked a question, and maybe one of two things actually happen. One is they told you exactly what to do, and this is the only way forward, and like, you got to listen to this advice. Of course, they maybe didn't tell you anything useful either, and that must have been, like it was for me, incredibly frustrating. But then the other thing that could have happened is they could have pretended to have the answer. They could have pretended to know what to tell you, when that actual response of theirs wasn't even relevant or helpful or valuable. And that is really, really frustrating to me in the industry. We really need more medical professionals to be better educated and just aware about the body response to vaginismus, the holistic approach that is required to overcome vaginismus. And so there you go, my little spiel on why this is a Q&R session and not a Q&A session. And this idea was something that I got from one of the mentors that I work with. It's really important being a mentor that you have mentors. And so she introduced the Q&R tradition, and I'm happy to continue that concept. So we have some questions that have been submitted over the last week, and I'm going to go ahead and start with those. If you have questions that pop up for you, anyone who's here live, or if there are questions that kind of spark up as a result of this conversation today, please go ahead and share as a comment. And I want you to know you're also welcome to post anonymously. We've had some anonymous posts already. That is a perfect way for you to contribute and participate in this community if that feels like the best way for you, the most safe way for you. So the first question, this was actually an email that I received from one of you in response to an email that I sent out. And in the email that I sent out, I asked if there was any question that you could ask someone who has already overcome vaginismus, what would it be? And so this was the question. If I could ask one question to someone that has beat vaginismus, I would ask, how difficult is it to go through the dilating process? For me, I think that would be the most difficult challenge to beat vaginismus, the dilators, and I just don't think I can do it. In fact, I'm just terrified of the thought of even trying the dilators. So beautiful question. And I remember also having this question when I was starting my journey, because it was the very first thing that I was recommended to do, is to go out, buy a dilator set and then to start inserting the dilators and, overcome vaginismus with penetration. I think I mentioned this analogy last time. Handing out dilators to those of us who clearly have some subconscious resistance to penetration is like handing out spiders to someone who has a phobia of spiders, right? It's silly that to answer a question, to help with a struggle, we give the very same catalyst of that struggle as a tool for resolving it. It's true that some sort of penetration needs to happen eventually for us to be able to overcome vaginismus. It's true, whether that's dilators, whether those are crystal wands, which I invite in the exploration of penetration down the line to create it a more pleasurable experience, a more erotic, luxurious, loving experience with ourselves. Crystal wands can be beautiful tools for this. So it's true, yes, that we need to penetrate at some point, but it's very important that we don't do this too early. If we start using dilators too early, we will be only going deeper and deeper into the cycle of pain, because we wouldn't have actually stopped the very same protective mechanisms of the body to brace for penetration. We first need to create an environment in which our nervous system doesn't feel spooked at the thought of penetration, at the imagination of that, or at the attempt of penetration. We need to first work with ourselves on an emotional level, on an erotic level, creating a sense of safety and curiosity to pleasure, and literally waiting until we have a curiosity for penetration. I remember when I got my dilator set, it was the Laura Berman set. Don't recommend it. It is a plastic set. It has that huge ruggedy, like rubbery sleeve as part of the set. And if you've read any of my blogs and dilator reviews, you'll see that I compared it to a previous partner's like Ford truck tire. That's how intense this sleeve looks. And I remember getting this set and starting to work with it. And trigger warning here, because I'm about to mention the R word. As I was trying to penetrate myself with it, it felt like I was raping myself. And this, it's an awful experience to feel like we're forcing upon ourselves something that our body is clearly a no to. So before we continue with the dilating process as part of our journey, we need to sense the yes to the curiosity to even hold a dilator in our hand, or place a dilator close to the vaginal opening, or try to penetrate with the dilator. In fact, we need to listen for the hell yes that the body gives us through physical sensations, and also through the literal like slight opening of the vaginal opening. There is a very subtle sensation where we start to feel a craving for penetration. And this is the body communicating with us that it is a yes to this dilator being inside right now. So to answer this question, Dilating is incredibly difficult when we don't approach it in a holistic way that honors our body's authentic yeses and nos. When we do, though, when we do honor those, and when we engage in emotional healing, finding and embracing our authentic sexual self, the eroticism, the play of it all, when we really go deep with ourselves and we understand, we create this awareness of why we have protected ourselves from this form of sex or all forms of sex. Dilating can be incredibly easy and it can be pleasurable. And there are no less than one stories on the Love Diary blog as a form of testimonial. I believe it was Elle who shared that she was over the moon because she never thought that dilating could actually be something that she enjoys. And she was orgasming through the penetration of dilating. I remember being on a call with her and celebrating this together when, after not being able to insert dilator one for a very long time, and then, of course, seeking help and thankfully seeking a sense of community that we have here, when she was ready and she felt the sense of safety and curiosity, she was able to insert dilator one flawlessly, and she orgasmed with it inside. That is how easy dilating can be. And that's when moving from one dilator up to the next and up to the next actually starts to be a really gradual and not necessarily slow, but oftentimes slow at first process to that actually picks up in speed as our body becomes used to and has the desire for penetration, simply because it is also a source of pleasure and connection with ourselves. So is there anything that comes up for you as questions or comments with this response to the first question? And just rereading the question again, I want to reiterate how normal it is to be terrified of dilators right now. Please know that you can start the journey while being terrified of dilators. You don't have to jump into dilating right away. In fact, it's counterproductive to do so. So if you, one, have delayed getting your dilator set, or two, have gotten it and it's sitting in the closet, like mine was sitting in the closet for like a long time. I think it was actually just a couple of weeks at first. But then after I tried dilating for the first time, I put it in there and I told myself like, no way. And it sat in there for more than a few months. And that is also absolutely normal. And in fact, you should celebrate yourself for that because you're listening to yourself. You're listening to the hell no of those dilators getting anywhere close to your vulva, being attempted to be inserted in your vagina. It is critical that we don't push through this part. We need to make friends with our body's clear message that it's a no right now, and to gently guide ourselves to a place of feeling the yes. Okay. So question number 2, would you say the main tools for combating vaginismus are breathing, pelvic floor therapy, and dilating? This was a short list, and the question really is, are these the main tools? These are parts of the tools, and they're not the main tools. So first, I just want to again reiterate that the main tools have to do with nervous system downregulation, the emotional journey with this, and actually I've started to avoid using the term healing. Now, I want you to know that if healing is a term that feels really helpful, useful, and true to you, please go ahead and continue using the term healing. I use the term healing very much, and in one of my online courses, I even put it as part of the title. It's the emotional healing journey. And it was true, I did go on an emotional healing journey. Still, the reason why I've broken up with the term healing on many levels is that I don't believe there's anything to heal anymore. I don't believe that there's anything broken with me, with you, with anyone in the world, in fact, that actually needs fixing so that we can go from point A of not being able to have PIV sex to point B of being able to enjoy PIV sex, right? There was nothing ever broken. There's no healing. In fact, your body is acting in the way that makes sense for it because it perceives PIV sex as dangerous for one reason or another. And I know this can be a hard pill to swallow, but what if we can thank our body for doing its part to protect us right now, knowing that we don't need to heal it, we don't need to change it, we just need to help it feel safe and then guide it along in the process of opening, of going from a closed state and an I'm not doing this, I want to keep you safe, to hey, come, it's actually safe over here, it's okay. Let me show you why and how you can be at ease in this context. And we introduce layer by layer these new aspects of intimacy, of the vulnerability that intimacy requires, and we invite it to open. We're not healing it, we are inviting it into a new way of being and doing. That is what overcoming vaginismus is an invitation to a new way of being and doing. So we went off on a bit of a tangent there, but I hope that that was helpful for you. And I'm very curious, do you feel that the term healing is resonant for you? Or would you say that maybe it was in the past, but at this moment, it doesn't feel very resonant? And in fact, you'd like to avoid the concept of feeling like you are on this healing journey. Because when is the healing journey gonna end, right? When I overcame vaginismus and I started enjoying penetrative sex, a part of me hadn't let go of the concept that I'm now healed. I was still connected to this part, that the part of me that still felt broken, that I was this girl who couldn't enjoy the thing that a lot of other women get to enjoy as almost like an instinct, right? Like an animal instinct. I still felt broken to some level. And it's important that we let go of the concept of being broken far before we could even overcome vaginismus. In fact, it's part of the path that helps us overcome vaginismus more quickly, with more confidence, with more pleasure. So please tell me what you think about this term healing. I'm checking in on the comments here to see if anybody's commenting live. If you're watching live with us, I invite you to let us know how that landed. So no, the main tools of combating vaginismus aren't breathing, pelvic floor therapy, and dilating. Those are beautiful parts, but here are some other ones, right? So pelvic floor relaxation exercises include breathing, but they also include reverse Kegel exercises. They include stretching, self-massage, and foam rolling, as well as using massage balls for external trigger point release. They might include yoga and meditation, and I've got some audio files to support you in those pelvic floor relaxation exercises for full body relaxation, stretching routine in there, foam rolling routine, belly breathing, reverse Kegels. What else? Yes, the jaw relaxations. So there is a practice for massaging the jaw to support it and relaxing, because the pelvic floor tightness is very much connected to jaw tightness. When we relax one, we actually are also relaxing the other indirectly. So you can do a little trick where you relax the jaw to help the pelvic floor relax. There is a hip tension release. So in some cases, our hips are actually misaligned to each other, whether it's in this way or actually where one hip is a little bit forward and the other one is a little bit back. And this could be causing pelvic floor tension. So there is a practice to notice whether one of your hips is slightly out which would actually make your legs a little bit longer, one leg longer than the other. And when we balance out the hips, you can do this by yourself at home with a partner, or a friend or a family member who can help. Just 2 people are required in this practice. You will notice a difference in how you even walk. I remember the first time I did this, Luke is a practitioner that I worked with who taught me this practice. The first time that I did this, one of my legs was actually quite a bit out. So it was longer than the others simply because the hip was misaligned. And when they got put together with this practice, I started walking differently. And of course, I didn't notice it for too long, but as soon as I got up off the table and I started walking, I was like, oh, this feels different. And I believe it was also part of the cause for my lower back pain. Okay, so we want to look at pelvic floor relaxation exercises beyond the breathing piece. We want to look at the whole body. We want to notice, is it that my quads are tight and therefore my pelvic floor is getting pulled in ways that it shouldn't, and that is contributing to its tightness? In my case, my glute muscles were also weak, and it was through some of the strengthening exercises plus the stretching exercises that I could add and create balance in my body so that the pelvic floor muscles felt supported. A pelvic floor physiotherapist is the perfect person to help you with this, because it's important for us to be physically assessed by somebody who can actually analyze what's happening with our muscular structure and our alignment, as well as internally, only if you're ready for that, so that they can provide personalized guidance for this, right? For our unique state of the pelvic floor muscles. For most people, the thing to do first is relaxation and strengthening after. So we don't want to be doing Kegel exercises with the purpose of strengthening. We want to be doing reverse Kegel exercises with the purpose of relaxing and lengthening and getting out of the overactive state of the pelvic floor muscles. Okay, so those are some details on pelvic floor relaxation exercises. There's also emotional healing, which the way that I guide people through the process is we start with pelvic floor relaxation exercises and emotional healing. Those kind of work in tandem. And when we get to a certain stage, we incorporate erotic practices, embodiment, playfulness of our sexual energy. And only after those pieces of the puzzle come together do we introduce dilating. Okay, so what's part of emotional healing? Emotional healing is this huge term. I want to say it may be emotional calibration to our goal, whatever your intimacy goal is. Maybe that's how I'm going to avoid using the word healing. But the emotional piece can include and must include subconscious work. So our conscious mind is responsible for 5% of our behavior. The subconscious mind is responsible for the other 95%. And that is why you might be laying in bed and you might have this desire for PIV sex and this curiosity and this like feeling like, yes, this is it. That's the conscious mind talking. But 95%, the iceberg underneath the surface doesn't agree with the full body yes. It is still in protection mode. So as part of the emotional journey, we need to start to align the subconscious mind with safety and curiosity and play and pleasure. And sometimes that involves really deep work with our past life experiences, awareness of why our body is doing what it is doing today, and coming to a place of peace. Sometimes certain close familial relationships are to be looked at, certain events of trauma, and this could be a big T trauma or a little t trauma. We've all experienced trauma in our lives, right? Trauma is anything that feels less than nourishing to our bodies. And it is in those times when we were little that emotions were so overwhelming that we couldn't deal with them. We didn't have the tools, we didn't have the parental holding to be able to deal with those emotions, that we stored them in the body. we simply stored them because we couldn't process them at the time. And so we started building up these suppressed emotions that have a very real physical manifestation. That physical manifestation is tightness, it's closing, and the nervous system goes into this state of being on high alert. And hence, the emotional journey involves subconscious work, but it definitely also needs to incorporate nervous system downregulation. We need to get our nervous system to a place of safety so that we can escape from the survival mechanisms of the freeze, fight, flight responses, right? Because vaginismus really is a freeze response. It is us saying, is closing off and saying no. So nervous system work needs to be part of this, and TRE is a beautiful practice to support you in this. About 2 years ago now, I got trained in this modality, and it is amazing. This is essentially us activating the self-cleaning function that our body actually has through neurogenic muscle tremors. And the neurogenic muscle tremors are essentially the central nervous system helping us release what the body has been physically storing, the physical tightness, as well as that emotional energy. And sometimes we can have emotional releases during a TRE session, just as we might have emotional releases during a really deep stretch of the psoas muscle, for example. The psoas muscle is the stress muscle, and this is what stores a lot of what we experience in life. So there are instances of people at a yoga class, right, just doing a simple stretch of the psoas muscle and bursting out into tears. This is very normal, and it is beautiful that the body does this. It can happen during TRE. It can also happen during a massage. And I have written about 2 instances where I have burst out into full-blown tears during a massage that a previous partner gave me. It was one instance, and my partner now as well. This has happened. It's also happened during sex, during orgasms, crygasms can happen. And these are just the body releasing what it's been holding. And it's incredible. So it supports nervous system downregulation, this release. Anyways, so what else? What are other tools? I've just written them down here. Like I said, erotic healing, exploration, and play. There is the work of Betty Martin and the Wheel of Consent that I guide people in as well, in finding safety in touch and really determining the intricacies of touch. And I'm not going to go into too much detail, but have you ever laid in bed and been touched in a particular way? Maybe a partner was going down on you, and you in your mind felt, this doesn't actually really feel that good. But should I say anything? Like, they seem like they're enjoying themselves. Who is this touch actually for? Is this touch for me, or is this touch for them? Because when we can fully, truly receive touch that is for us exactly in the way that we want it, that is a magical experience. And that is pure receiving. This is the nature of receiving. If we are tolerating a touch that is being done to us, we're not actually receiving. In fact, we're giving a particular access to our body. We're allowing for our body to be used for someone else's pleasure, or at least what we assume is someone else's pleasure. But what's true often is that that partner feels like they're doing this because it's for us and we're enjoying it. And at the same time, we're like, okay, well, this doesn't feel good. It must be for them and they're enjoying it. And nobody gets the pleasure that's intended for you. So we have to start to unravel those pieces and to learn through embodiment practices, games, and of course, improving our communication, who the touch is for, and landing in a true place of either receiving or the pure giving, or the other 2 parts of this wheel of consent that I mentioned are taking and allowing. And I have a whole course on this and video guidance, and as part of our Sexually Liberated program, we spend time on this also before we ever touch dilators and start using dilators. because it's critical that we land safe touch that actually feels good before we expect our body to tolerate any other form of touch, including penetration. Great, so that's the erotic exploration and play, which of course also involves the erotic languages. You may have heard of the erotic languages before. If not, please watch day 2 of my free masterclass. And we have to rekindle this intimate connection with ourselves above all, first, before we ever expect a dilator to be accepted into our body. Then, and this might come first, if this is something that feels like one of the major challenges for you, potentially, is body image. Body image, the journey with that, and feeling like we truly love ourselves and our bodies. And of course, we may have insecurities about our bodies up until the day we die, but what's important is that those are on the periphery of the core feeling of love and acceptance for ourselves and our bodies. A body that doesn't truly feel loved by us is not a body that is going to allow for us to do things to it. And hence it's going to close down. It's going to feel like, well, you didn't share love with me. I can't share myself fully with you because I don't quite trust you, to be honest. So we got to have our body to start trusting ourselves. And there is a mirror game that is incredibly helpful with body image. It's also, this one's actually part of the Rekindling Intimate Connection journey that I've put together for you. The relationship with our vulva and with our vagina as well is huge here. In Tantra, there are certain tantric rituals. One is called yoni gazing, in which we start to create that connection with our vulva. I remember feeling a lot of resistance when looking at my vulva. This was something that felt gross to me. In fact, when I was younger and I would self-pleasure, and I would do this quite rarely because it wasn't something that I celebrated in my life, it was doused in so much shame, right? And I trust that a lot of us have had this experience. When I would self-pleasure for the purpose of stress relief, for the most part, I would do so over my clothing. And sometimes it would involve using my hand, but sometimes it wouldn't. It would involve humping something. This is a beautiful way to self-pleasure. This might be something like your preference as well, as it was for me at the start. And I would go over my clothes because I would not want to touch the skin on my vulva. And if we have this disgust and this resistance to this part of our body, again, this part of our body is not going to feel like she can truly trust us, and she's not going to open to us. There's going to be resistance there. So body image and your relationship to your vulva is a big one. So only after all of this, when we start to feel what's there, what we've been holding on to, those suppressed emotions are starting to bubble up to be released. When we start to create honoring to our yeses and nos, we learn about consent, we create this beautiful relationship with our body, or at least we're on the road to that, right? It doesn't have to be 100% complete. But when we start to feel a readiness to something penetrative, we can start to explore penetration. This could be with a finger at first. It could be with the smallest dilator. It can be with a partner's finger if that feels safer. It could be at a pelvic floor physiotherapist's office if that feels better. But often, as we'll see in just a moment with the final question here that I've got, it can be an experience with someone who we don't truly feel at ease with, like a pelvic floor physical therapist. An experience of penetration there can actually bring up more things for us that lead us to having a disappointing experience, simply because it wasn't the safest way to go about it with our own finger, for example, a finger that we feel completely in control of, or a partner's finger that we're guiding and communicating as we go, at the pace at which it can be inserted, whether we change our mind at any point or whatever, right? So I will come back to this, but only after all of this is kind of going, we can start to explore penetration. And I also want to invite you that this can be in slightly non-traditional methods. So using a silicone dilator might not feel the best for you. Maybe we start with a crystal wand, a really smooth, kind of heavy feel, Mother Nature's material, a crystal that I also believe has healing properties, certain vibrations that help us attune to self-love, for example. That can be a tool that you can consider using. And I know some certain companies that I have had beautiful experiences with their products. So you can read about that on my blog as well. So those are the tools. And of course, there's intricacies to the actual dilating process as well. But our first Q&R covered some of the tips that I have about dilating. Okay. Great. And finally, one of our beautiful shares this week that I just want to comment briefly on was this. And you can go ahead and read other responses to this share in our group. So I've been stuck on size 2 of the small dilator kit for a few months. So I incorporated pelvic floor physical therapy. And in my last session, my PT attempted to perform an internal examination with her pinky finger, but I completely freaked out and she had to stop. I'm feeling so defeated. I guess my problem is letting up control. It's hard for me to even look in a mirror down there, feeling hopeless. Yeah, it's a really frustrating experience when we felt like this should be what we should be able to do at this point, and it still didn't happen. And like I mentioned just now, inserting a pinky finger by yourself is a very different experience than inserting a pinky finger of a pelvic floor physical therapist. And I imagine you also kind of made that comparison because you can insert a larger dilator by yourself, but even a pinky finger by a physical therapist didn't work, where that size was smaller, right? And it's true, it's smaller, but the actual environment in which you were in the office with those crinkly sheets, I imagine, at least in doctors' offices here in Canada, they typically have it be that way. It's not conducive to being at ease and relaxed. Maybe you didn't have enough time to really settle into your body, to meditate a little bit, to listen to some music, to breathe. And it's another person's finger coming at you. And this in itself is the main reason that so often we can feel like we're making progress by ourselves, but then when someone else is to penetrate us, all of that goes out the door. It's true, we have found safety in that control. And part of the journey is to start to feel safe despite the environment we're in, even when we don't quite have control over things. That's kind of like, you know, if there was a hierarchy, it's kind of like the highest step. But what's true is that we can also create a more deep feeling of being in control, even when it's the pelvic floor physical therapist's pinky. But like I said, also in my response in writing in the group, there are steps for us to be able to arrive at that place. So it's really normal to feel defeated in times like this. I invite you to take the time that you need to be with that feeling rather than, suppressing it. Cry it out, rage, show anger in a healthy way, ideally. There's some anger release practices that I guide people in. It's very critical for us to give those emotions the time and space to be expressed. And when you feel like you'd like to give it another shot, I invite you to back up a little bit and do what might feel like taking a few steps back, but in reality, you're setting yourself up for success in the long run. So take a few steps backwards in a way where you start to practice with yourself, creating a sense of relaxation, And maybe start to introduce certain factors at home that feel a little bit closer to what you might experience in a pelvic floor physical therapist's office, just to start to guide yourself and your body and your nervous system into safety, even when there are distractions around you. On the flip side, take what you've got at home to the office of that PT. Take your music, take a candle, take a nice smelling incense, if that works for you. Ask her to hold her hand and guide her hand inside as you would do a dilator. These are all things that we can do to help ourselves. And these are all really critical tips to also take to a first pelvic exam. And I've got a whole video on how to set yourself up for a first successful pelvic exam as part of the pleasant and effective dilating guidance that I've created. We've got to take the parts that help us succeed at home and create as close of a possible environment as we have at home at the office of a medical professional. And on top of that, I just want to also note, sometimes what's nice to remember is that we don't necessarily need anyone outside of ourselves. I have seen people struggle for a very long time going to the PT's office and sort of feeling like, this is where I'm going to do penetration. This is where I'm going to make progress. And then one day I'm going to be ready and I'm going to go have PIV sex at home. And I've seen people stuck here for a long time. It's important that you empower yourself, that at home you get to make progress. At home, you can move up dilator sizes. At home, you can also do self-trigger point release, which is really important in the dilating journey. You can do yoni mapping and self-exploration and self-pleasure, and you can make all the progress at home. And you can choose to go to the PT's office to check in and almost test yourself in those new environments to see how much safety have I landed in my body. And you can have those wins, and you can continue to have those wins at the PT's office. But the big chunk of the work happens at home. And what's also true is that it's possible for us to never go to a medical professional's office and to make all of that progress at home. I didn't know about pelvic floor physiotherapists in my journey. I never went to a PT's office and I overcame vaginismus. The women that I support choose to either do all at home work or also get the in-person support. And in one particular case, with G, I don't remember if we shared her full name in the testimonial, so I'm not going to share it here. But I know that G had chosen to work with a PT, and she went back to the PT as our work together continued. And she said that the pelvic floor physical therapy said that this is the fastest progress that she has witnessed in someone. The speed at which she was making progress was high because she felt empowered at home to be doing the work and the play with herself. And she checked in with the PT to just have this additional level of support and certainty and some help with trigger point release to feel like, okay, I've got this. And to have that additional person say how well she was doing, that of course is also really, really helpful, this feedback. So it's possible. And it's entirely up to you to decide what actually feels better to you. Because if every single time you go to a PT's office, you feel a lot of anxiety, my invitation for you is to do the work that helps you with that anxiety and choose for yourself to continue going to the PT, or maybe you take a little bit of a break, and that is exactly what is actually most supportive to you. So that was a lot. You can tell I get super passionate about this. If all that you take away today is to trust yourself, this would be the best thing to kind of take away from today's conversation. Trust yourself at what feels best. And trust yourself to hear an answer that somebody might have shared, just like you may have heard something from me today that you don't agree with. I invite you to trust yourself that you don't agree with it and that this is not the road for you. Okay. Having that relationship to ourselves is the most critical thing we can do. And it is exactly coming home to ourselves, to our bodies, that helps us overcome vaginismus. So please don't ever take anyone's word as absolute truth. Check back with your own intuition with how you feel about it. Gauge what your body is telling you and follow the path that actually feels best to you. Okay. I'm going to just check again to see if anyone else has got any comments. And those of you watching on the recording, please share with us what has been helpful for you here or what hasn't been helpful and what else you would add to our exploration. Okay. So thank you for being here for yourself. I love you. I hope you're having a beautiful day. As one of my mentors says, you smell nice. That's how she says goodbye. I've got to think of my own thing though. I will not take on someone else's tradition. That's why I love giving credit for things that I didn't create. But I hope you know that you're amazing. I hope you know that you're at a beautiful spot in your process. Trust yourself, and I will see you again at our next Q&R. We will also be having some events popping up in here that you can take part in as part of our sisterhood. So keep your eyes peeled for how you can get involved if that feels like the best path for you. Okay, have a wonderful day. Bye.